I never imagined that a single piece of paper taped crookedly to my mailbox would be the beginning of everything that followed. I remember standing there early in the morning, coffee still warm in my hand, reading words that did not make sense at first. The homeowners association claimed I owed unpaid fees. They said I was violating community rules. They said enforcement action would begin immediately. I actually laughed because my family owned this land long before the neighborhood existed. Before the HOA was even an idea, this property sat at the edge of the valley where my grandfather built a small dam decades ago. That dam was not decorative, it was functional. It controlled seasonal runoff. It protected downstream homes from flooding. It had been inspected, maintained, and approved for generations. The HOA, however, saw none of that history. All they saw was something they did not control. I contacted them immediately. I sent copies of county records showing my exemption I provided, environmental permits, maintenance, logs, and photographs older than the board members themselves. I explained calmly that the dam was legally protected and essential for flood prevention. I thought logic would be enough. I was wrong. The response was cold, automated, threatening. Another letter arrived, then another, each one escalating. They accused me of endangering the community. They claimed the dam violated aesthetic standards. They demanded removal or payment. I attended an HOA meeting, hoping to speak face to face. What I walked into felt less like a meeting and more like a trial. I was interrupted, talked over, mocked. One board member actually said, "We do not need your old dirt wall anymore." People laughed. I warned them again, I explained. The rainy season was coming. I explained the water levels were already high. They dismissed everything. Weeks later, without notice, heavy machinery rolled onto my land. Bulldozers, excavators, workers carrying paperwork signed by the HOA president authorizing demolition. I begged them to stop. I showed them the permits again. I explained the risk. They said they were just following orders. The first cut into the dam released a surge of water, not dangerous yet, but alarming by sunset. The structure was destroyed. Decades of protection gone in hours. That night, the sky darkened. The next morning, rain began. Not dramatic, not alarming, just steady, relentless rain. Water flowed where it never had before, down the valley, through streets, into homes. Basements filled. Roads disappeared, cars floated, people screamed, emergency sirens echoed across the neighborhood. The HOA went silent. Their president posted a brief message saying the situation was under control. It was not. By nightfall, entire blocks were underwater. Families stood on rooftops. Rescue boats moved through what used to be quiet streets. Power failed. Phones rang endlessly. Officials arrived. Engineers followed, and the truth emerged quickly. The flood path led directly to my property, to where the dam once stood. Suddenly, everyone wanted answers. Suddenly the HOA wanted to talk. Suddenly lawyers called, and that was only the beginning. In the days after the flood, the neighborhood looked like a disaster zone. Mud covered everything. Furniture sat ruined on sidewalks. Drywall peeled away from homes. Families walked around in silence, trying to understand how something so normal had turned so catastrophic. The HOA finally sent out an email, calling it an unfortunate natural event. That wording alone made people furious because everyone already knew this was not natural. County officials returned with full engineering teams. They mapped the runoff, measured soil saturation, traced water velocity, and every line pointed back to the same missing structure: the dam. My grandfather built the dam. The HOA ordered destroyed. Word spread fast. Residents started connecting the dots. People remembered my warnings, my emails, my appearance at the meeting where I was laughed at. Anger shifted quickly. Emergency meetings were called. This time the HOA president did not smile. This time security stood at the doors. Residents demanded explanations, shouted questions, held up photos of flooded homes. One man yelled that his entire life savings was gone. Another woman cried, saying her children barely escaped the water. The board had no answers behind the scenes. Panic took over. The HOA hired lawyers, crisis consultants, public relations firms. Emails leaked later. showing board members scrambling to rewrite history, claiming they were never warned, claiming they relied on contractors, claiming ignorance, but the paper trail was too clear. Subpoenas followed, emails, texts, meeting minutes, everything was demanded, and everything showed the same truth repeated. Warnings ignored, expert advice dismissed, authority abused, insurance companies denied coverage, citing gross negligence. The city filed its own lawsuit. Homeowners filed class actions. The HOA suddenly faced damages beyond anything they could afford. Depositions were brutal. Board members contradicted themselves. Some claimed they never saw reports. Others admitted they voted yes just to avoid conflict. One former board member admitted under oath that aesthetics mattered more to them than safety. That statement alone made headlines. When the trial began, the courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every seat. Residents stood in the back. Cameras rolled. Experts testified, one after another, explaining how the dam slowed water, how it spread pressure, how removing it without planning was like pulling a cork from a bottle. Then I testified. I brought records dating back decades. Permits, inspections, maintenance logs, photographs of my grandfather and father standing proudly beside the dam. I explained calmly how I warned them, how I begged them, how I tried everything. The HOA attorney tried to paint me as stubborn, irresponsible, outdated, but the judge stopped him, reminding the court that once the HOA authorized demolition, I was legally prohibited from interfering. That single fact crushed their defense. The jury listened silently. The verdict came back unanimous. The HOA was found fully liable. Damages were awarded in numbers that caused gasps. The association was effectively bankrupt within weeks. The HOA dissolved. Accounts frozen, liens placed, assets seized. The board members resigned, vanished, sold homes quietly. Some left town entirely. The neighborhood was placed under city management. Rebuilding began slowly, painfully. Not everyone returned. I rebuilt the dam. Stronger, engineered, monitored, approved at every level. Now when it rains, the valley stays calm, the water behaves, and every time I see it, I remember how arrogance, unchecked power, and ignored warnings destroyed an entire community. And that still was not the end. After the verdict, life did not suddenly return to normal for anyone. The neighborhood looked repaired on the surface, but underneath everything had changed. Trust was gone, friendships were broken, and the idea of community had collapsed. People no longer believed in authority simply because it claimed to protect them. Former HOA board members tried to defend themselves publicly at first. One gave an interview saying they were volunteers doing their best. That interview backfired. Immediately residents responded with photos, emails, warnings, recordings, proof that showed how easily power had gone to their heads. The video was taken down within hours, but screenshots lived forever. Civil suits followed the main case. Individual homeowners sued board members personally, claiming reckless endangerment. Some settled quietly, others fought and lost savings, retirement accounts, reputations. One former board member tried to run for local office years later and lost in a landslide. Once voters remembered his name, the city changed its policies because of what happened. New regulations were passed requiring environmental review for any HOA action involving land, water, or infrastructure. Training became mandatory. Board members were required to certify understanding of basic safety responsibilities. The flood became a case study taught to city planners, lawyers, and engineers. As for revenge, it did not come in shouting or threats. It came in consequences. Every board member had to live knowing their decisions destroyed homes, uprooted families, and erased years of hard work. They had to see the rebuilt dam every day, a silent reminder of what arrogance cost. Was asked many times if I felt satisfied. The truth is, satisfaction is complicated. I never wanted destruction. I wanted prevention. I wanted them to listen, but there was something powerful about watching accountability finally exist, about seeing people who abused authority faced reality. Years past the dam stood. Strong sensors monitored water levels, data fed directly to the county, alerts triggered automatically. Nothing relied on opinion anymore, only facts. The valley became safer than it had ever been. New families moved in, unaware of the history, until heavy rains came, And nothing happened. Sometimes newcomers asked why the dam looked so serious, why there were signs and a plaque, why it seemed protected by law. The plaque told the story briefly. It spoke of negligence, lessons learned, and the cost of ignoring expertise on the anniversary of the flood. A small gathering formed quietly. Residents who stayed placed flowers near the river, not in anger, but in remembrance. They talked about how quickly things can fall apart when people stop listening. Stood there watching the water move slowly, controlled safely, and I thought about my grandfather, my father, and how close we came to losing everything they built. Because someone wanted control over something they did not understand. The HOA was gone. Its name remembered only as a warning the neighborhood rebuilt. But wiser, the dam remained a symbol not of defiance, but of responsibility. And every time rain begins to fall, I remember the lesson that changed everything. Power without knowledge is dangerous. Authority without humility is destructive, and ignoring the truth always has consequences.